Max. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Good evening, Julien. What's up with you?
Well, you know what? I'm great. And I have been in this lockdown mood for so long that I don't even remember what travel is like. But I do believe that the story you want to tell on the couch today is in regards to
It is.
travel. Is it not?
You are correct, sir. It's from 2019 when we were able to travel. And the thing to understand this story is to understand how much I love sleep. As a French person, I think the way to put it is to me, sleep is like a really wonderful meal with the
Okay.
perfect wine or cider and just the right meat and all the right stuff there. That to me is sleep.
It
So
does resonate with me, I must say.
there you go. All right. So now I can tell the story. It was in Toronto and it was in a blizzard. So it was one of these things where I was on one of those trips where I was doing a presentation in Toronto and I forget the next city, but I had a presentation the next day in that city. Plenty of time. Everything was going to be smooth. But the minute I got in the cab and started checking my phone, I was not getting out that night. Just that was obvious. That was point number one. Point number two was I did not have a hotel that night. So I started looking and I could find a hotel, but it was on the other side of town from the airport and it was going to be about a 2 hour drive. Remember when we had commute hour? About a 2 hour drive during commute hour,
I do. I
uh,
do.
getting to the airport. Um, I had, it was very easy to switch my flight. There was a 6 a.m. flight, which, okay, signed up for that. Got to the airport, had the flight done, so didn't even have to go talk to anybody at the airport about the flight. But then I had the hotel issue, and I looked and looked, and finally I called the travel agent. The travel agent was amazing. Actually, I called the travel agent to switch the flight already, but I was like, "Oh, I'll find the hotel. Don't worry about that." And I couldn't. And eventually, I called, and it was about a 2 hour process to find a hotel and ultimately found one real close to the airport. So that was great. Went there, and the reason it took so long to find this reservation, even though it was some weird bastard reservation. And when I got to the hotel, they didn't recognize it. So there was another 3 hour process just waiting to get cleared and to get checked in, and the manager had to finally literally go in the back room, and I don't know what he did back there, but the little Wizard of Oz things, he pulled some strings and I got a room. And eventually I got into the room and okay, uh, went down. Fortunately, the restaurant was open late, so I was able to have a burger. Got back to the room and it's like 11:30, and I have a 6 a.m. flight. And I think I mentioned I love sleep. So I'm now
You
looking
did.
at, it's going to take me a little bit to just get organized, and I'm looking at a 4:30 wake up call and a midnight go to bed, and that's not. I'm not okay with that. So, all right, we'll do it. Whatever, that's life. So went to bed. Alarm went off, and alarm was on my phone. I looked at my phone, and there, right above the alarm, was a note from the airline saying your flight has been delayed 3 hours. Now, that put my presentation at risk. I did not care. That just meant I could go to sleep for another hour and a half, 2 hours, still have plenty of time. I was just like, oh, so back to sleep I went. Got a little more, still not as much sleep as I'd like, but approaching a normal night, I would be functional. Um, got a series of texts from the airline saying, flight's delayed. I think it started at 3 hours and it actually stretched out beyond that. It was getting to 4+ hours. But I slept some extra, but then I got up and I'm like, okay, I better get to the airport, just keep my bases covered. Then I started getting texts saying, you aren't here yet. Why aren't you here for your flight? And I'm like, the flight's been delayed and so I screenshot the two texts and I sent a tweet out and mentioned the airline and said, okay, guys, how do I process this? And it was kind of interesting. The airline came back and they said, things happen. Sometimes when we put in a delay, if we can, if something falls really lucky and we get a slot, we will shoot that plane out in 30 minutes and you'll miss your flight. So that's why we're telling you to get there. But it was just I mean, literally within 2 minutes, I had one that said, your flight is now 5 hours late, and another that said, how come you're not here? And I was like, seriously, guys? And so I ended up learning a little bit about how delays work and such. And I think I ended up missing the presentation. Well, you can tell how meaningful that was to me. I can't even remember anymore. But it just struck me. There were two things about it. One was how schizophrenic it was, and two was again the power of Twitter. The fact that I could put that out there, and the airline would respond and say, "Hey, here's why." And it's like, okay, I'm not happy with that, but all right.
And that's probably a mix between a human interaction and a computer interaction. What happened over Twitter was you talking to human beings, trying to analyze, and human beings who could actually put themselves in your shoes and realize what you were going through. While the text messages, I assume, that you received were automated from a system that said, on one side, there is a delay, send that message. And on the other side, hey, there might be an option, send that message, regardless of what happened just 2 minutes earlier. And
you're right. It was two automated system with two conflicting triggers, if you will.
And that's the thing. I mean, you can't do business nowadays and scale without automation. You can't. You have to automate part of your business. You have to, especially notification. It's so important. We keep repeating that it's important to keep your customers in the loop. It's important to set expectations. All that is great, but it requires automation at some point. Now, automation without boundaries, without rules, is bound to fail, obviously. And that's probably what happened here.
More, yeah. I think that is what happened. Or the rule, there were rules, but the rules didn't help. The picture was sufficiently complex that two conflicting things went in there. I think what's most important is what you mentioned before. It's automation without a human backup is where you have a problem. And the fact that this was automation with a human backup, even if it was just to tell me, this is why we're nagging you. Sorry if you don't like being nagged, but any question about our common sense? And I'm like, no, that makes sense. Okay.
It could have been worse, though. It could have been worse because if I'm in your situation and I really lack some sleep and I receive a message telling me your flight has been delayed for 3 hours, I go back to sleep for 2 hours 59. And whatever text you send me in the meantime, not my problem. I'm not going to read it.
Yeah. And at that point, if that flight took off after 2 hours, you're going to have, you're going to be talking to the airline. The airline's going to have a very unfun, all right, let's see what we can do. And, the other part about it was I knew the flight wasn't going anywhere. It was still dumping snow. It wasn't like there was some mystery as to what was going to happen with this flight.
And then it's adding confusion to the whole thing. So probably what they should be doing here is let's do automation. Let's have this Twitter backup. Let's keep in mind as well that not everyone is a Twitter user, and not everyone will think about going on Twitter, and not everyone will think about taking screenshots and try to explain a complex situation on Twitter without screenshots. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
So what they should probably be doing is give people the ability to respond to automated messages, or ask a question, click a button, click a link. I don't know. Don't just send a notification. Give me a little more that I can react. I can tell you, hold on, there is something wrong. Or, a link to check the actual facts online with the latest information. Whatever that is, it should be a bit more interactive.
And again, it was 4:30 in the morning when I received that. I might have been able to reply. I didn't try. But yeah, you bring up an excellent point. Is if my flight's delayed 4 hours or 3 hours, boy, give me a chance to reply and say, I need to reschedule. What do I do? Right. I mean, that's at that point, that's critical. That's
Exactly.
a huge
And many
motivator.
companies may be thinking, I don't want them to reschedule, so I'm not going to make it easy on them to cancel the flight. But the real answer is short term versus long term. If you don't give the option, you're saving short term cost, but you're losing long term loyalty with your customer.
Right.
If you make it easy, well, that might be a quick loss here, but in the long run, you're going to win by having a very loyal customer. So I'm not sure we've helped anyone. I'm hoping we've helped a few people today, at least given them some tricks and things to think about. But definitely, I feel bad for your experience. How do you feel about it now?
I feel fine. I feel much better. I mean,
You've slept since, right?
this experience for me was I got an extra hour and a half of sleep. So it was all positive after that. There was nothing, if I missed something because of that, I wasn't going to feel bad about it at all. So
that's all I needed to hear.
Good and always better when I get to share these stories with you. So I feel better just for that.
Perfect. Then Max, I wish you have a nice day, and it's a little bit early for you, but sleep tight, and I'll see you again next week.
All right. Well, you have a nice evening, and your sleep is a little bit closer. Take care.